Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition. And luckily for you, I'm not doing much talking this round, so feel free to give it 5 stars for your listening pleasure and tell everyone else about it. Thank you.
Woo! A couple things to start. The Netflix is doing a second season of The Monster, which is the Jeffrey Dahmer show that they did, but this time about Eric and Lyle Menendez.
Which is crazy because we knew they were going to do a second one, but they had kind of set it up to be John Wayne Gacy
Mm-hmm.
in that last episode, and
Yeah.
then it wasn't.
Yeah. So that will be exciting. Because that one went so well, the Jeffrey Dahmer one.
and I'm intrigued to see.
Because there also are a lot of like dramatized versions of the Menendez brothers anyway. Like there are like a bunch of movies that are acted versions of it. So like it is interesting, this is not gonna like how is it gonna be different, I guess.
Yeah, but I also wonder like what what direction they're gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Monster
Mm-hmm.
this time?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen there's a new show on Netflix called Dirty Pop?
Yeah, I've seen
Okay.
that it's fair.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. All right, folks. So I have a pretty short one for you today. A long time ago, we did a case, and at the end of it, I promised that I would do this case eventually. But it is
In fact, I put this
true.
case on my list and Katie said, take that shit off.
Mm-hmm. But it is going to be short because there's a lot. There's not a lot. There's pretty straightforward information that leads us to believe one thing, and yet there's not a lot of investigation into that. So what we have here is pretty sparse. All right, buckled in. No content warnings other than it's true crime this time. So Todd Geib was last seen at a party in Casnovia, Michigan on June 11th, 2005. His bot It sounds like royalty, like Princess of Genovia.
Francisco. That's fun to say.
Yeah.
It's like one of those countries from a Netflix Christmas special that gets 4 different movies on it.
Mm-hmm. His body was found 21 days later on July 2nd in a private lake nearby. Private will be disputed, I think, but by private, they mean like secluded. Pretty
Okay.
private. His body was floating upright and was described as having moderate decomposition. Police theorized that he strayed off from a party and accidentally drowned in the nearby lake. They ruled it an undetermined or accidental drowning. His family, a group of investigators, and lots of outsiders, though, find this hard to believe. At the time of his disappearance, Todd was 22 years old, 5'11", and about 180 pounds. He lived in a small Michigan village called Ravenna with his parents, literally a village, too small to be a town, until he moved to the neighboring village of Casnovia, where he lived in an apartment with his cousin. Everything is small enough, obviously, to be called a village, and thus is quite walkable. Todd's mom, Kathy, describes him as someone who loved life and openly shared his problems with her. She said, quote, "I never want Todd's life to be about his tragic death. He was so much more than that. He was full of life, love, adventure, loyalty, and a wonderful sense of humor. He was a genuine character. He loved hunting, fishing, dirt biking, and all things trucks." End quote. He was known to be a great athlete and an avid outdoorsman. making the rest of this a little weird. The evening of June 11th, Todd was hanging out with some friends, including his best friend, Dave. They started off the night at the Half Moon Bar and Grill before heading to an annual keg party in an orchard around 9:30. I don't know if that's just village things or if we were just losers. But
Just
that
village things.
that is so foreign to me. So they stayed at this party until about midnight when Todd wanted to go home. By all reports, he was not stumbling or super intoxicated when he left. He started the 1 mile walk in the direction of his apartment around midnight, which is confirmed by witnesses. Really not disputed, mostly. A few calls were made from his cell phone between 12:45 and 1 a.m. At 12:47, his friend Patricia got a call from him while she was still at the party. She says she heard someone say, "I'm in a field," 2 times before the phone call ended. She called him back and the call was answered, but there was no response on the other end besides possible heavy breathing or wind. Records do indicate high winds that night, so that could have been what she heard. His phone also made 2 calls to his friend Dave, which don't seem to have been answered, and no voicemails were left. It should have taken Todd about 20 minutes to walk the mile home, but he didn't make it home that night. And he obviously hadn't made it home by the time these phone calls were being made, which is weird because that would be a long time walking. The next day, Todd didn't show up for a family event that he was expected at, so his mom filed a missing persons report. Unlike other cases of missing adults, it seems the police department took this report seriously immediately. They began searching right away in the area between the orchard and Todd's apartment. Within the next 2 days, they had almost 1,500 people searching, including police and civilians, along with helicopters and bloodhounds. The bloodhounds tracked Todd's scent through the orchard, down a dirt path, and out to a road before losing it. This leads some to believe that Todd was either picked up or injured on that road. On June 19th, the police and the family met with a psychic who claimed that Todd was deceased near a lone tree and partially underwater in an open area. Tell me, why are the police meeting with a psychic? Like, we've heard about psychics, like, calling families and whatever, but, like, why the fuck are the police entertaining, like, a meeting with this person?
Well, and like, I've heard of that, like, police, like, entertaining conversations with psychics when they've, like, exhausted every other
Right.
option and just need, like, any lead to work with. But, like, it
7
feels,
days later.
yeah, it feels silly to be asking for help from one this early in.
And, I mean, the reason I put this in here is because it is a pretty good description of where Todd will be found. But obviously they didn't, like, take the information and go look for, well, that's not true, actually. Never mind. Let me keep going. So 21 days later, on July 2nd, 2 miles from his home, Todd Geib's body was found in Ovidal Lake by a married couple, Jim and Brenda Wild. This lake was fairly private and secluded, and, like, it was, like, their lake, but, like, probably not owned by them, but, like, that's where they fished. Their family all went and fished, whatever. But it did have people fishing in the days that he was missing, and the police had actually already searched it with no luck. So whether they searched it because of what the psychic said or not sure, but they had already searched it. Just the day prior, Jim's brother had been fishing in the lake all day and night and saw nothing abnormal. But when they were there that day, Brenda noticed something in the water that she assumed was an animal, but upon closer inspection, it was actually the body of Todd Geib floating upright in the water. His head was above water, with the rest of his body vertical, like he was standing in water. There was nothing tied to or being used to anchor Todd's body, so Jim went looking for one of his canoes to bring the body to shore in, but it wasn't where he usually tied it up. He looked around the edges of the lake before he found it on the opposite side, full of beer cans. He said, "Who took my canoe?" He wondered who had come and untied his boat and drank a bunch of beer in it. And him and others wonder if possibly someone used the boat to place the body in the water. And they were drunk while doing it. I don't know. Ovidal Lake was in the opposite direction of Todd's apartment and the way that he was walking, according to everyone at the party. And this was an area that Todd knew like the back of his hand. Everyone who was with him said that he was not stumbling or confused, so would he have just accidentally gotten entirely turned around and ended up in a secluded lake? Probably not, is the answer. It was also discovered that in order to reach that part of the lake, Todd would have to cross swampy terrain and completely cut through the woods. The father of the boys throwing the orchard party said that to get from the party to the lake, someone would have to go through a lot of prickly brush and would almost certainly sustain injuries or be pretty cut up. Which, of course, Todd's body was not. There are not any homes, cabins, or roads directly in view of the lake that would have witnessed anything happening in the lake, or I guess near it, at midnight. A rumor circulated that Todd had been involved in a fight around 12:45 a.m. while at the party, which contradicts the idea that he left at midnight by himself. Some witnesses, though, do report seeing a group of men from a nearby city who seemed to be looking for a fight shortly before midnight. Maybe they hung around, lurked, caught him. I don't know. Police got in touch with a man who was rumored to have had an altercation with Todd. The young man said that he returned to the orchard party from a bar between 1:30 and 2:05 a.m. He bumped into a dark-complexioned white man who was drunk and wanted to fight. But he says he talked the man down and then walked away. This is the last he saw of this drunk man, and then he stayed at the party until around 4 a.m. Investigators don't believe that this matches Todd's description and whereabouts at that time, since he should have been home if he was leaving at 12, and he didn't seem like the type to want to fight, or that he was like that drunk. But it is believed that this man knew that the police were coming to talk to him that day and what they were asking about. So, he may have had time to get his story together. Little sussy boy. When Todd's body was recovered, they did not find the hat he was wearing that night, his cell phone, and one of his shoes. So they had everything except his hat, his cell phone, and one shoe. This, along with the suspicious phone calls made from Todd's phone early that morning, leads skilled investigators Dr. Lee Gilbertson, Kevin Gannon, Anthony Duarte, and Michael Donovan to believe that Todd was abducted and that the abductor was trying to make it look like someone who was disheveled and disorganized had simply lost their way in the dark and accidentally died. So, they believe they made the phone calls and, just made noises and, sounded drunk, or, just to kind of create the illusion that the person was, still alive and well. And they believe that they, purposely took, one shoe, a hat, and left him with other stuff so that it looks like, oh, he was just stumbling through, lost some stuff.
The age-old Cinderella story.
True. Some strange findings related to Todd's body include that while the rest of the lake's surface was covered in algae, Todd's body and clothing were relatively clean. On the back of Todd's jeans, there was a large rip that did not look consistent with someone who, basically accidentally bent over and ripped their pants. It looked like something had snagged onto them, something quite large. There was also no water found in his lungs, which is what you would typically find in a drowning victim, unless he was so drunk or unconscious when he went into the water that he did not attempt to breathe. But again, it sounds like he was not that drunk. On the other side, though, on the other side of the argument, not on the other side, physically, there were also no ligature marks or defensive wounds found on Todd's body, which would help point to foul play. So we have nothing obvious pointing to drowning, but also nothing obvious pointing to murder, other than the obvious things. But in Dr. Brian Hunter's autopsy report, he wrote that the level of decomposition was intermediate to moderate. This is not what you would expect for a body that has been in the June and July water for 21 days. In fact, Dr. Eric Benbow, I hadn't said that out loud, a forensic biologist, said that you should have seen significant insect and animal activity within minutes of a body, maybe like within the death, I guess. Possibly hours, or he said 1 day at the most. He found this to be especially strange because Todd's head was above water, so it almost certainly should have had insects nesting inside of it. But it didn't. For your stink face, it didn't.
Still gross. He's
Doctor,
like, why doesn't this young man have insects nesting in his face?
this is what I
Hello?
was waiting for. Dr. Hunter's autopsy had many inconsistencies with what was reported and initially found on the scene. The on the scene report says that lividity was found as expected. This is unclear if it means expected for a drowning victim, meaning that the lividity would be along the front of someone's body, like as if they laid on their stomach, or if he means expected for the position that Todd was actually found in, meaning that lividity would be like from the waist down. It just says as expected. But in the which is just so silly when nothing else is as expected. I need more than that, friend. But in the autopsy report, Dr. Hunter wrote that the position of lividity could not be determined. This is going to be a long quote. According to Dr. Gilbertson and Kevin Gannon in their book, Case Studies in Drowning Forensics, quote, the first decision required of field examiner Kempf was under the section entitled Primary Rationale for Medical Examiner Activity. He was offered 8 options plus other. 8 options plus other. He could have checked. I was like,
8 options plus other.
Well, I was like, 8 options plus. Why wouldn't they just say 9? 8 actual options plus other. He could have checked cause of death not determinable by attending physician or accidental death. He did not. Rather, he checked the box for suspicious circumstances. The medical examiner was equally as cautious and had examined Todd's stomach for pill fragments. This level of suspicion was even held by the lead investigator, Detective Sergeant Gary Miles. During the course of numerous conversations with Detective Sergeant Miles from September 2008 to May 2009, we learned that every inch of Todd's body was painstakingly examined to see whether there were any needle marks. When we asked him why that was done, Detective Sergeant Miles stated that they were looking for anything that might help to explain what had happened to Todd. Given that the relatively pristine appearance of Todd's body was inconsistent with the outdoor temperatures and weather conditions, especially considering the extended period of time that he was missing, Todd should have been very badly decomposed. Since he was not, Detective Sergeant Miles told us that he had taken every step to look for clues into Todd's death. Obviously, Miles knew that something suspicious had occurred with regard to Todd's case. End quote. Even so, Todd's death was ruled an accidental drowning after the autopsy was completed, which is why these sweet investigator men are so confused. Because at every turn, everyone thought that this did not make any sense, that this was very suspicious, that that's what they were looking at was something homicidal. And then they said, well, but we don't want to look any further. So, accident.
But we don't want to.
Yeah. In the toxicology report, they found a mixture of alcohol and antidepressants in Todd's system. They found high levels of desipramine and amitriptyline, which are 2 of the same type of medication that are not often prescribed together. In fact, they weren't prescribed to Todd at all. He had no history of depression.
Is there a reason they're not prescribed together? Like, are they?
Yes.
Add together?
Yes. When combined together.
Oh, sorry.
And when combined with alcohol, these medications have been known to cause confusion, agitation, and hallucinations. These are not drugs that would typically be taken recreationally to get high, as they don't cause any euphoric feelings. It is also notable that the amount found in his system is twice the highest recommended dose. Yeah. It would also be possible to overdose on these types of drugs, and at this dosage, he certainly could have felt the effects within an hour, possibly leading to a cardiac event or a coma. So, is it possible that Todd was given 2 drugs at the party and he just didn't know what they were? Like, someone just said, "Here, take these," and he's like, "Yeah." Or that, although it isn't common, perhaps people were using them recreationally. I don't know why, but I guess it's possible. But the side effects of these mixed with alcohol could have possibly made an unlikely situation of a grown man getting lost in an area he knows well a little more likely, or it could make it more likely that he was made unconscious or put into a coma for multiple days before being killed. And I think the same question we had about Christopher Jenkins is the one that I have now, and I'm kind of skipping ahead, but it's fine. It's just that, like, without that knowing when they died, like, it's hard to know if the toxicology, like, what the relevance is. So, like, does it mean he took them or had them at the party? Or if he was kept alive for 2 weeks, that would mean that he was given those closer to his death, you know? So
Yeah.
it just, like, creates very different scenarios. Like, yes, they're doing the research to find out would people take them recreationally, but it's like, if we're also saying he was alive, then
It's not
he
like they
wasn't at a
took them
party
at the
anymore.
party. Yeah.
Right. The private investigators, along with renowned pathologist Cyril Wecht, believe that Todd was dead or unconscious at the time that he was placed in the water due to the evidence that he did not attempt to breathe. They also do not believe that he was dead for the entire 21 days that he was missing, so they believe that it is very likely that he was made unconscious or killed using high doses of these 2 drugs. Todd's BAC was 0.12% after his body was found. When we covered the Christopher Jenkins case, we wondered why the BAC would matter in the theory that he was held somewhere else prior to being killed. Same thing with the drugs, because this would mean that the alcohol on the night of the disappearance is no longer relevant. This is still true here. However, an interesting part is that, well, and I guess this is true for Christopher Jenkins too, because there was like GHB in his.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are like, oh, he like got date rape drugged at the bar, but like be giving them this at any time. But the theory, it's made interesting by the theory that the abductor could have mixed drugs and alcohol to make Todd disoriented or unconscious. But like, especially if he's being held somewhere, this could be like a continuous thing that he's being given these drugs and alcohol. I have also always wondered how the BAC stays what it was at the time of death throughout like the decomposition process.
Yeah.
But in Gannon and Gilbertson's book, they explained that the postmortem production of alcohol would actually increase by 0.015. Why would you put 0.0150? Just it would increase by 0.015 during the first month in water. So for Todd, at 3 weeks, it would have only increased by 0.011, which would make the actual BAC at the time of his death 0.109. This comes in at about 5.5 drinks. With Todd's BMI and the fact that he was an experienced drinker in a small town at 22 years old.
Love that for him.
Yeah. So given those 2 things, this was really not like major. 5.5 drinks, he's like fine. However, with the alcohol mixing with the drugs, it actually seems that he would be too incapacitated to even make it to the lake. So at first we're arguing he is not drunk enough to have gone the wrong way. But now, if he is on these drugs that would have sent his ass into a coma, and he's had 5.5 drinks, we're wondering how would he even walk that far?
Yeah.
But again, if he was held for 2+ weeks, we don't know when, where, how often he's being given these things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the weirdest part about this whole case is just how many people have said that it isn't possible for Todd to have been in that water for 21 days, but still leave this case closed as an accident. Gannon and Gilbertson wrote about the level of marbling, bloating, and degloving on Todd's body, which point to him having been dead for no longer than 36 hours on land or 72 hours in water. They did experiment with pig carcasses, like the chickens in the West Memphis 3 case, and confirmed that bodies are destroyed quickly in this environment. By the 21st day, the pig's carcass had completely collapsed, basically exploded, from decomposition along with significant insect activity. The investigators firmly believe that Todd Geib was abducted and held on land before dumping his body in the lake, but they also believe that his case is connected to the Smiley Face killers, which a lot of people think.
Plural?
Yes. A lot of people think that this is what starts to make this case, like, silly. Like, people think the Smiley Face Killers theory is, like, far-fetched. But it is crazy, all these similarities. So, in their book, they discuss various cases similar to Todd's. In 2002, the body of Michael Knoll was recovered from Half Moon Lake in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which I think is ironic that he was at the Half Moon Bar and Grill. Todd was in Michigan, and this kid comes up dead in Half Moon Lake in Wisconsin. Michael was found in a similar upright position. However, this doesn't help us explain Todd's positioning because Michael's was attributed to ice, but Todd was found in the middle of the summer. So, not the same. Right after the 3rd anniversary of Todd's disappearance, Kathy Geib went to visit his gravesite and found a smiley face sticker had been placed on his headstone. Rude.
Yeah,
She called
for several reasons.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to believe, like, I'm like, did someone think they were, like, being nice? And then I'm like, no, fuck off. She called Kevin Gannon, and while they talked, she remembered that there had also been a spray-painted smiley face near the location where Todd's body was found. A red smiley face with horns was on a tree not far from the orchard party. Creepy.
Yeah, why horns?
Like devil horns?
I know, but like why? Why you do that?
Devilish. Because they just killed someone, maybe? For many years, young men around the Midwest have gone missing to be found in bodies of water, most of which have a smiley face somewhere nearby. Is this a serial killer? A group of serial killers? An organized crime unit? Do they communicate on the dark web? Or was Todd killed by someone he knew, and the smiley faces are either unrelated or used to throw people off? 2 of the boys that Todd was with that night, Theodore and Chuck,
This case is actually from the 1920s.
Yeah, left for Pensacola, Florida within a day or 2 of Todd going missing. But outside of this somewhat suspiciously timed travel and the rumors that Todd had an altercation, we don't really have any suspects here. I did read on the family's Facebook page, Kathy said, like, we have a good feeling of who's responsible, but I have not found theories out there or like who she might be referencing.
Was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if like that's something they want to keep under wraps because they're still trying to get it reopened. But so here are some further similarities between Todd's case and other unsolved cases of young men that could be related to the smiley face killers. Most were successful athletes or students who disappeared while out drinking with friends. They wind up dead in bodies of water. Dakota James's body wasn't found for 40 days, and when it was, it had no visible damage, which was abnormal since it was found in the heavily trafficked Ohio River. Tommy Booth was found in a creek 2 weeks after his disappearance. When he was found, his body was in full rigor mortis, which usually dissipates after 24 to 36 hours. In a case we covered a while back, Christopher Jenkins' body was found nearly 4 months after he was last seen, And it was also believed then that the distance his body had traveled and the state that it was in seemed inconsistent with being dead in that river for 4 months. So, whether we believe it's the thing for me is like I could be convinced of the smiley face killers because these are things that are like really weird and similar, but like I would need I think like one person's case to be solved first because like I don't the smiley face killers is this like elusive concept to me. Like they do believe that they're working through the dark web, but is it like a bunch of people who are just like on this mission to kill young men and like in the Batman they just like all carry it out separately? Like I'm like I don't know. Or do they believe these people like travel? Because there have been cases where they'll point to like, well, this person died or this guy was killed and then this guy was killed nearby, so like they could have still been in the area, you know?
Yeah, I wonder even if like it's some kind of like hit system,
Sure.
like through the dark web, and like the smiley face is like confirmation.
We did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think it's like Israel keys on our hands just traveling around and like taking out young men. I feel like it is like if it is anything, it is like a group. And then I also am sure that some of the smiley faces mean nothing because smiley faces are like the most common thing to spray paint and they're commonly made onto stickers, and so people just teenagers are spray painting things.
Yeah.
So
I every time I think about the smiley face killers, I think about like when we were in like middle school maybe, someone robbed our great grandma's house and our aunt was like taking a shower afterwards, and when she got out of the shower, like the steam on her mirror, like the person who had robbed them had like put a smiley face on the mirror with their finger, and she like didn't see it until the like steam pulled it up, and it like really like freaked her out, obviously. And I think about that like every time, like I'm like,
there's just something so like foreboding about
yeah,
a smiley face being by a crime. Like
and it feels like less and less coincidental.
Yes.
Every time it happens.
Yeah. So, in 2019, the Muskegon County prosecutor met with Kathy Geib and the investigators, reviewed their evidence, and he was strongly considering reopening the case as a homicide. However, this did not happen. And today, in 2024, the family is still fighting for their son. So, linked in the show notes, I'm going to put the Facebook page for Reopen Todd Geib's case and their change.org petition. So if you want to go follow along, updates, see what's going on, that is all we have. This is basically just an episode to say, hello, Muskegon County.
Police.
Do something, please.
Help. Police. You know?
Do you have any burning thoughts, questions?
No, I do think it's possible of like the theory of like the smiley face killers being some sort of like dark web thing, whether it's some sort of like weird like game or like ritual.
Yeah. Right.
Or like ritual like a
Yeah.
ceremony ritual, but like some sort of like you have to do this to be in our group kind
Yeah,
of thing.
I know. I'm kind of like, is it a bunch of incels who are like,
right,
oh, these guys are like
kill the hot
talented
guys
and like going to college and like, eh.
And I even thought like the like hit, I was like, I wonder if it's like some sort of like somebody, I don't know, I guess I don't know enough about each of the people this has happened to,
Sure.
but like I wonder if it's like some sort of like vigilante thing. Like they wronged someone,
Yeah.
and so like
Are
you
people
put it
just like
on this website
submitting?
and they go and
Yeah,
take
they're
care
like,
of it.
I hate Todd Geib, and they're
Yeah.
like, cool, I got him. I live nearby. I'll take him out. Like, I don't. Yeah.
It's it's like the people from the first Deadpool movie.
Mhm.
Like that's just what they do, you know?
Yeah.
Um I don't know though. I do think it's plausible that that I think if there is anything to the smiley face killer slash killer's theory, it would be that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a
They're
serial
not like
killer.
moving as a
Because,
unit across the
yeah.
country.
Because, I mean, like, none of the smiley faces even look the same.
No.
Or even, like, the same medium. Like, some are spray painted, some are stickers, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's, like, one killer.
Right, and it's much
But I
more
think
likely that
other
someone who's like involved
instances.
in the community just went by his grave site and was like, sticker on this, than it is like his killer like
Yeah.
went by, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. That's my only thought. And like truthfully, I would be like fascinated if there was like some rampant serial killer in our midst or going around the country killing young men and then putting smiley faces everywhere. Hmm, be interesting. I just don't think that that's what's happening.
I'd buy it on DVD, ebook,
Yeah.
everything.
I did see something about a serial killer um on the news last night in Colorado. A guy who had like killed some women and like a long time ago was
Mhm.
just like caught and arrested.
Mhm. Crazy.
That was cool.
Yeah. Mhm.
Not that he killed them, but
Yeah,
that he
that's
was
not cool.
caught and arrested.
Mhm. Well, that is all, folks.
Bye.
Bye.